I'm going to make another Ich bin nackt video, and except for the sunglasses and hat, I am totally nackt or naked. Now, my last video, my meow video, now I had on a pair of Levi's. Now I had my window open, but I've got the curtain drawn. I just got out of the shower, and these Ich bin nackt videos, I usually get out of the shower. Now, when I made that, talk about those German POWs. Well, let me give you the name of several of these other. These the narrator on these all sound the same. So I'm guessing there's one individual or maybe a small group that put these on. The voice may be AI, and it does these do kind of have the earmark of a little bit of propaganda. I'm thinking these are loosely based upon the lives of real people. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Now, you said it's like WW2, POW Diaries, Women of World War II, women of WW2, like that. It's 3 or 4 more. Once you start searching these will come up. It said you will hear the same voice on most of these. So, like I said, it's one individual or a small group that's putting these out. Now, they have mentioned, real names. So, one lady had, after the war was over, she had produced, I'm guessing her family is probably all gone. She really didn't have anything. She really didn't have anything to return to back in Europe. So she asked and got permission to stay in the U.S. One lady had started a bakery down in Fredericksburg, Texas. I'm gonna get to that in a second. Now, so a couple other ladies. Okay, then again, I don't think they had family to return to in Europe, so they chose to, marry, Americans, marry people from Texas around here that got to know and fell in love with them. They had families, and of course, these ladies were adults in the 40s, so they're all gone now. But their their grandchildren are still around, and they have these, family histories. But said, this is not my history. I just find these stories interesting. But like I said, I was born in Phoenix. My parents are, were born here in, the U.S. My grandparents were born here. You go beyond that a few generations, and I'm not quite sure who all my ancestors were. My American and my ancestors, my kinfolk from all over the world. So, one thing my mother would say, she said, "Hey, don't criticize that word. That you don't criticize." I try to think how she phrased it. Don't say anything bad about those people because they were probably your ancestors, or something to that effect. That's not an exact quote from my mother, but she'd say stuff like that. But anyway, this one lady. Well, let me get to Fredericksburg, Texas. Now, if you search here on YouTube, if you search Texas German, there's a small community down there. I mean, these multi-generational Americans that are of, originally of, people come over here from Germany, different parts of Germany, back in the mid 1800s. Now, it's a little bit different than Hochdeutsch. That's the common, that's High German. It's not exactly like it. It's a little bit different, and people have gone through there. People that have posted that on YouTube have gone through there that do speak German and say just a unique particular language that they've kind of piecemeal together. Of course, these guys all do speak English, but they speak Texas German as a side by side. Like a lot of Hispanics around here will speak an American form of Spanish. The Spanish that a lot of the Latinos around here speak a little bit different than the Spanish they speak in Mexico, or a little bit different than the Spanish they speak in Spain. So they're just, a little bit of regional dialect. I'll tell you, I can't remember exactly how you phrase that, but it's a little bit different. But anyway, Fredericksburg is definitely on my bucket list of places to visit once I can get out and cover places like that. Or if somebody's interested in, maybe like taking a 2 or 3 day road trip. I'd like to go down. Some chick wants to, take a 2 or 3 day road trip down to that part of the world. I'd certainly be. But I would want to know somebody well enough to know that I wouldn't be 2,000 miles from home. And some chick look at me in the eyes and say, "James, out of my car now. I just don't like you." So I'd want to know somebody before I take off on a 2 or 3 day road trip with them. Let's see if I covered everything here. Said, yeah, that's. Now, I've covered this 3 or 4 times. Those Kriegsmariners, the Gila Ben boatman. Now, again, that's not my personal story, but I just find that kind of interesting because a couple of those guys did come back over here. They sent them all back. After when the war was over. That's kind of the way the game had to be played. But not all of them, but a few of them came back and chose to live here just because they liked it here. The This was back in 43, 44, somewhere in there. They were housed over in a POW camp in the East Valley. And there's a plaque over there. And sometime I need to, dedicate it to them. Sometime I need to get over there and get a video from that. I wish I had, when I did those jobs over in the East Valley, it was a week or so ago. But I was kind of wiped out from that job, and I wanted to get back home because I was a little bit tired from. But I did get to zone when I was down there. But anyway, these guys had broke out of that, the POW camp. They had a couple of multi-man, rafts or dinghies or whatever it was. They were going to float down the Gila River. They'd marched through the desert for 3 or 4 days with the local police and the FBI and I guess a few other, police organizations looking for them. They were enemy soldiers, enemy sailors really. But anyway, they had they'd marched through the desert for a couple of days. When they had got to the Gila River, there wasn't any water in it; it was dry. They just had to have to wait for the police to to surrender to the place. Of course, after the war was over, like I said, they sent them back, and a few of them did come back over here and made lives. And of course, they're all gone by now. See, I think I covered everything here. Okay, for the descendants of I'm trying to think of her name, the one that had the bakery there in Fredericksburg. Chick. Ich liebe dich, Frau. Weich Dios, and auf Wiedersehen.